in the state. So if you want to be a nurse or a doctor, or if you want to do construction, or if you want to be a plumber, you got to get a license for that. And so we license those entities all throughout the state. My background is actually public administration. I studied political science at American University down the road in DC, and then went on to study public administration at both the University of Delaware and culminating with a doctorate in public administration from Valdosta State University down in Georgia. So I'm not an expert, but I know a little something. And hopefully that little something that I know can be shared and enhanced in this space. And as far as leadership experience, in addition to my day job, both my wife and I are leaders within our church. We're on the worship and arts ministry and also very active within the community. I served as a former elected official in the city of Mason, served for 10 years on the city council, and also served as mayor pro tem and serve on various boards of directors for nonprofit organizations. So we've experienced leadership both being in the leading side of things and also in the following side of things, and both are critically important. So, Margaret?
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Good morning, everyone. Protocol has been established. It is my absolute pleasure to be with you all here today. I will give just a brief introduction as well. So I'm Margaret Brown. In my professional, well, I guess I'll do the academic path since that's where you started. So I'm a proud registered nurse, have been for 18, 19 years, somewhere in there. Yes, yay, healthcare workers. I'm actually graduating from Towson University here just up the road in Maryland. I then went to Michigan State University, go green, go white, go Spartan Nation, and I received a master's of public health there with a focus in administration. I absolutely love all things public health and really all things nursing. From there, I furthered my education by receiving a doctorate in health administration from the great Central Michigan University, Fire Up Chips. And right now, in my professional endeavors, I recently switched organizations and I work for a premier health plan within the state of Michigan, where I serve as the senior director for care management for all lines of business, Medicare, Medicaid, individual markets, our commercial market, and we service about 1.3 million people within the state of Michigan, so I have oversight of all of those departments. So like Marlon, I'm not an expert, but I know a little something. And from a leadership perspective, wow, I've been in leadership. I can remember getting my start really within the church, being a young child, courtesy of our ecumenical patriarch and mother bishop, and even having that extended to my professional career, where I've been serving in leadership functions for 11, 12 years now, everything from being in a management position to being a director of multiple departments to where I am now. So leadership is something that we are both very passionate about, and that our extreme desire and hope for you all today is that the information that we'll share, because we're not gonna go into a ton of things, we're really gonna hone in on a key skill. Our hope is that this is something that you can use both in your professional capacity as well as in your parish capacity here within the faith-based organization in which you serve.
Great. Margaret already kind of mentioned why we do some of what we do, but both of us have a true passion for leadership and for organizations. And I like to share something that we wrote down a couple years ago, just as a little bit of a personal mission for when we do these types of presentations. But we came up with the idea that our goal is to equip leaders and those that they lead achieve their full potential. And we like to focus on leadership education and practice as it specifically relates to faith-based organizations. So this is something that we enjoy. We benefit from a lot of leadership training in the secular world. And what we like to do, because we grew up in the church, is to make that same level of content and training available to faith-based organizations. So, with that, today's workshop is about effective leadership in the church and in the secular world. And I have to say, just at the get-go, Margaret and I struggled with the topic just for a brief moment, because as Christians, when we lead in the secular world, we lead on principles that are based in the church. And so if you are a Christian, if you are leading in a church setting or in a secular setting, the values and the way that you operate and the way that you treat others, they actually cross into both realms. And so there really is no division between how you lead in your job versus how you lead in a church setting. People may say, you lead differently than other people. And, I'll just smile, but I know the reality of that is because I'm leading from a place of relying on God, relying on the Holy Spirit. And so we want to say for all of us who are in this space right now, you should not be two totally different people when you're at church and when you're at work or when you're out in the world. So how you lead, how you represent God should be the same, should be consistent. That being said, leadership is a huge topic. We actually developed a course many years ago on leadership, and even in 12 weeks of content, we could not cover but just a taste of it. And so today, our goal is not to talk about all the ways that you can be an effective leadership, but really to focus on one practice that you can use in any setting. And Mother Bishop said it correctly. Whether you are a leader, whether you are a follower, you lead from where you are. And no matter where you are leading, no matter where you are following, we believe that the practices that we're going to share today will help you to be effective in how God has called you to lead. So your theme this year for the UFCCM conference is Remembering the Vision While Going Forward in Unity. And that is taken from Jeremiah 6:16. So there are two things that are going on in that theme. The first is that we have a vision, and the second is that we have unity. And within the leadership literature, there is something called a shared vision. And so as we began thinking about how we could bridge the gap between an effective leadership practice and what your theme was, this led us to the leadership component of creating or developing a shared vision. And within developing a shared vision, there's lots of different things that we could talk about, but we want to focus on one specific tactic of developing a shared vision, and that is the practice of listening. And so we can talk about communication, we can talk about vision exercises and things of that nature, but something that can be applicable no matter where you are and is a indispensable leadership practice is the art of listening. So I want to share with you, there is a book by James Kouzes and Barry Posner called The Leadership Challenge. So if you're writing it down, it's called The Leadership Challenge. James Kouzes, Kouzes, and Barry Posner, Posner. This is a really good leadership book. Margaret actually uses the book in a course that she teaches at Purdue Global University. These particular authors have more than 35 years of experience researching various leadership practices. And within their book, they hone in on 5 practices of exemplary leadership. Those practices are modeling the way, challenging the process, enabling others to act, encouraging the heart, and what we're going to focus on today, inspiring shared vision. We wish we could go into all 5 of those, but as Mother Bishop said, we only have 50 minutes. So we're going to talk about inspiring a shared vision. And inspiring a shared vision, so we talked about remembering the vision, moving forward in unity. Inspiring a shared vision is a foundational concept in leadership. There are lots of other things that stem from a shared vision. So as an organization, if you are developing a mission, a vision, or a value statement, that flows from a shared vision. If you are looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats as an organization, that flows from a shared vision. If you are looking at a strategic plan or how you develop goals and objectives to achieve your purpose as an organization, that flows from a shared vision. If you are doing a logic model or looking at the relationship between what you have and what you want to achieve, that flows from a shared vision. So what we are teaching today and what you are focusing on for your conference theme is truly foundational for what the next 20 years look like, not only for the UFCCM, but what the next few years in your own life, in your own ministry, and your own leadership look like. So we're actually going to give you a couple quotes today. One quote I want to share before we dive into the specifics of shared vision and the art of listening is what is leadership? And I don't know who said this, but it wasn't me, but I love it. And that is, a leader without followers is just someone taking a walk. So if you think about that, a leader without followers is just someone taking a walk. You see someone down the street and people are following them, you're like, oh, they must be doing something. People are following them. You see someone walking down the street and nobody's with them, they're just exercising. So shared vision is what makes others join you or follow you in your leadership journey. And I want to add a biblical foundation to this. As we were thinking about this in this quote, I thought about how many people walked with Jesus and followed after Jesus. So Matthew 4:19, Jesus says, "Come and follow me. And he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So Jesus is the quintessential example of what true leadership is. And if you look through the Gospels and look at how he led, there are so many things that we can glean from that. But if we're looking at the context of a shared vision here, Jesus had his mission, but he invited others to be a part of that mission and that vision. And so when he says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men," and I don't have time to go into all of this right here, but I'm sure so many could really just delve into this. But he knew that Peter and others were fishermen, right? So he extends an invitation, "Follow me, and we're going to enhance this vision. You won't just be a fisherman. You're going to be a fisher of men." And so what he is saying is that you thought your vision is one thing, but together we can actually make that vision so much greater. If you follow me and come under my leadership, I'm inviting you to be a part of this. And what I'm doing is I'm speaking to your skills, speaking to what you already do, and showing how we can take what God has already given you and allow that to contribute to the whole vision that we're trying to achieve. Like I said, I can't go into a whole lot there, but that's just a little bit of a taste of what Jesus can teach us about a shared vision. So now Margaret's going to talk a little bit more about where we're going with that.
Thanks, Marlon. We get very excited when we talk about leadership, so I am doing my due diligence to keep my eyes on the clock as best as I can. So Marlon was talking about inspiring a shared vision and how we have that example through Christ. As a leader, whether it's in a formal capacity, meaning you have the title, or in an informal capacity, meaning that you're leading side to side, you may not have the title, but you're an example to others. Your central task is to inspire a shared vision, not sell your personal view to the world. Because what happens when you sell something? You're constantly pushing, whether or not if that person wants to receive it or not. Versus if you're inspiring a shared vision, it's a collective and a collaborative activity. So, why a shared vision? Couple of points. First thing, it attracts more people. Pretty cut and dry. It sustains higher levels of motivation. Why? Because people are invested into that shared space. And here's the thing, and we can see evidence of this in our 20 years as the UFCCM. It sustains more challenges, it weathers the storm, than visions that are exclusive to only a few individuals. How many times have we seen visions rise and visions fall? I'm sure all of us have examples of that. So, shared visions have higher impacts on people's levels of motivation and therefore their productivity. So if you're highly motivated to do something, if you truly have a desire and a capacity and a will to participate in something, then your output or your productivity measures that follow that are going to increase. Why? Because you're motivated and you feel inspired. You feel like I have a voice, that I can contribute something meaningful based on my specific skills. I want to dispel a disbelief right now, and that is visions are top-down. Let's dispel that belief. Visions are not top-down. They can't be if we're going to have them be sustained through a longer period of time. And why are visions not top-down? Because we need people to make them a reality. I mean, this is practical application, you all. Like, it just is, right? So, we need people around us to make our vision a reality. Elsewise, it can just stay up here in the clouds. There's no real action. There's no real sustaining measure. Even if you feel like this is my idea and this is solely something that I want to take responsibility for, that's great. Go on and burn yourself out. Have at it. Go on and burn yourself out, because we cannot, nor should we, take on the full responsibility of the vision. And Christ didn't model that either. He incorporated people into what he was trying to do. So, too often we find that leaders slip into the idea that they have the sole responsibility to be the visionary. True, you're the one to envision the future, but it doesn't stop there. Research shows that people or constituents also want to see their own aspirations, their own ideals, hopes and dreams incorporated and appreciated. I literally could talk a whole 5 hours about how to appreciate people, because we all don't receive appreciation in the same way. But when you can combine that appreciation together with the incorporation of their idea, then the vision begins to flourish. So, in other words, they just don't want to see the vision of the leader. They want to see everyone's vision come together. So this is where really the art of leadership, as it relates to inspiring a shared vision, comes into play. Envision the future and communicate it in such a way that the people that you're leading find a way to achieve their hopes and dreams while achieving the same end result. Does this make sense, you all? So absolutely I can. So this is the art of leadership, envisioning the future and communicating it, the vision, in such a way that your constituents find a way to achieve their hopes and their dreams while achieving the end result. So if I can see my hopes and my dreams in the vision, I'm drawn to it. How many of us have turned away from things and we're like, no, I can't handle, that's not a value. I don't see God in this. Why? Because there's one vision, but you're not incorporated into it. You don't see yourself. You don't see your values. You don't see God moving in that way. So this is not going to be a didactic type of seminar. We're going to have some group participation, okay? So we're going to get to it in just a moment. Last thing I'll say about inspiring our shared vision, because as Marlon said, we could spend the whole time talking about strategic plans and how to actually write the vision and make it plain. That's a whole day's activity, and that's one of the things that we really enjoy. Foundational to inspiring a shared vision, to get people to collaborate with you, one thing. You gotta listen. Why listen? Because you're able to give voice to the people that are following you. You're able to give voice to their feelings, and it helps to build trust. How does it feel when you're talking to someone you feel like they're distracted and they're not listening to you? How much do you really want to continue to divulge sensitive information with them? You don't. You instantly are, no, I'll save it for someone else who actually wants to hear what it is that I'm saying. And the same is true of leaders. Great leaders are even greater listeners. They do it well. They find out what people want, they value, and what they dream about. This is all found out through listening. Listening is a tough skill, you all, to do it well. However, it is important, and we're going to take some time practicing it today. Before we get there, let's focus on a couple of tips here. Being a good listener, like I said, is the foundation of trust, and trust is also the foundation of leadership. You have to act as well. It's not just all up here in the clouds. But if you don't listen well, you may find that you're acting on the wrong thing. So that would be the same as me telling, hey, Marlon, our anniversary is coming up, and I would love some long stem roses. And he comes back with daffodils. Did you hear me? Not that he's ever done that, but I'm just... No. No, that didn't happen. But you don't want to act on the wrong thing, so that's why you listen. In our culture, in the American culture, taking broad strokes, we're not really taught how to listen. Stephen Covey, he's been around for years, one of my favorite leadership models, has a quote, and he says, most people do not listen with the intention to understand. They listen with the intention to reply. Yeah, right? Yeah, they listen to respond. So let's go over a few tips that I want you to keep in mind as we go through our activity. Pay attention, or as I like to say from my son's kindergarten teacher some years ago, listen with all fives. Hands, eyes, ears, feet, mouth. Basically, remove all the distractions, okay? Put away the phone, put away whatever else you may be working on, take your eyes off the computer screen, get fully focused into the person that you're trying to have a conversation with. Be present, nod, say okay, provide some type of behavioral cue that you're actually listening to the person. You all, it's very difficult at times to stop wandering thoughts. We think a lot quicker than what we speak, and our mind wanders in the middle of a conversation from time to time. One of my old medical directors who used to tell me, Margaret, if you have an idea and it's just like spot on, jot it down on a note or find another behavioral modification where you can be quiet and listen. Ask questions. Stop giving answers. You don't have to solve everything. Sometimes you just need to pull the information out of the person because they already know what the answer is intuitively, but they need you as a skillful and effective leader to pull the information out of them. That takes practice. Don't come to me with a problem and you don't have a solution, but if you do, I'm not going to solve it for you. I'm going to get you to pull out the information because that's then how you're able to take accountability and ownership and be vested into the solution and the outcome. Silence is golden. That was like 5 seconds. Did anybody feel uncomfortable? Silence is golden, you all. It's okay to take a pause before you respond. Really, it is. Let the information sink in. All right, so just a few tips based on some of our research. So this is where the participation comes into play. Did you want me to set this up? All right. So we are going to have a little activity. Actually, we're going to have two. And it's going to require us to be paired up, so one person and another person. So exercise will last about 4 to 5 minutes, and each person will get a turn. First person, and you can decide who it's going to be, share a story about the best party or event you ever went to. So take about 20 seconds, maybe 10. Take about 10, 15 seconds and think about the best party or event you ever went to. Okay, hopefully you have an example. And if it's not the best, it's okay. You just need something to talk about. The person that you're paired up with, they're going to look at you and listen. They are not allowed to give you any type of facial expression. So if Marlon's talking to me, I'm doing this.
So, and then I went here and, we did this and it was like really amazing and
no facial expression, no movement. You might be one of those people where your feet are just kind of going below the water, okay? We'll tell you why in a moment. So please take a moment and pair up, and find somebody, 2 minutes apiece, find someone you can chat with.
We'll let you know when it's time.
Yep. Okay. All right. If you don't have a partner, raise your hand, please. People can move around. All right. All right, so you ready? So have you identified who's sharing the story? First person to share the story. Start sharing now. About 30 seconds left to finish your story. All right, wrap up your story. Now, the person, your attention please, the person who was staring, now's your opportunity to share your story, and the other person's gonna give you the flat expression, okay? And go. About 20 seconds. All right. Okay. Attention forward, please. That's interesting. The room instantly got louder. Okay, so just 2 volunteers to answer 2 questions. The first question, when it was your turn to share the story, how did it feel to be listened to without being interrupted? Yes, back here. I may need you to speak up, please. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. So, found out a little bit about the marital status. Just needed the one volunteer because I'm sure. Okay. Just needed one volunteer. So, some of the key things that I heard him say, and I heard it kind of echoed over here, it was nice. You actually felt like, or correct me if I'm wrong, you felt maybe like they're not trying to push their agenda. They're actually trying to hear what I want to say. They're giving me time. Okay. For the person that was listening, here's the question. What did you notice about your level of attention when listening to the other person? What did you notice about your level of attention when listening to the other person? Yes, and we have a mic for you. Thank you, Bishop Hobson.
You really get to hear them. You know, it's like an intense cerebral thing where it's attractive. And that's what you know, for us. And that's kind of, I think once we have not really exercised like this, so that was really a great exercise for us. And in 44 years of marriage, we learned something.
Well, let's drop the mic and go. No, that you all's feedback is phenomenal. It is priceless. Because again, as I mentioned before, sometimes you're so quick and so ready to get in what it is that you have to say that you completely wash over what the other person is trying to communicate to you. And you all, when you ask someone to enter into a vulnerable space where you want to tell them something and they're trying to trust you that you're actually going to hear it and listen and maybe even act on what it is that I'm saying, wow. What does that do between the relationship between the leader and the follower, between a husband and a wife, between a sister and a friend, between a brother? Okay, I'm gonna move on because I get excited. We got another activity. All right, did you wanna set this one up? Okay, so, all right, exercise number 2, feel free to use the same partner. So, this time, the person is going to share, or you're going to share, a story about a challenge or an obstacle you recently overcame. Okay, ground rule. Share a story about a challenge or an obstacle that you recently overcame. Now, you all keep it light. The therapy session is tomorrow with my sister right here. So, no, I'm teasing. But keep it light. The other person, you get to talk this time. However, you can only ask open-ended questions. I'm glad that you asked. An example of something that is considered a closed-ended question is the light on? Yes. Did you do this? No. Closed-ended is yes, no. Boom. Open-ended, your question must start with what, how, why, when, where, who, because it opens up the dialogue. And it might be a little tricky. So, person, share your story, share your obstacle. You may need to keep it short so that the other person can interject because we want to start practicing some of those good listening skills. Allow them to be able to ask 1, maybe 2 questions, but it has to be open-ended. Okay? All right. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct. So the listener needs to ask 1 to 2 open-ended questions. All right, and decide on who's going to share first, and go.
About 20 more seconds to wrap up the first story, and then we'll swap. Okay, now we're going to ask you to swap roles. The person that was listening and asking questions can now share their story, and the person that was telling their story will now listen and ask questions. So go ahead. About 30 more seconds to wrap up. Okay, we're going to conclude this exercise. So we ask that you wrap up the conversation, and we're going to have some follow-up questions on that. All right. There was definitely more volume in the room. We could tell that there was some engagement back and forth. So first question that we have for the person, and we just want one example, for the person who was sharing their story, here's the question we'd like to ask you. How did you feel when the other person asked you open-ended questions? So how did you feel when the other person asked you open-ended questions?
At this point, I trusted that person. When they came and asked me questions, when I shared my story, I trusted that young lady. When I'm saying trusted, I felt her spirit. And I felt that whatever I was saying to her, she was listening before she asked me a question.
Wow, that is beautiful. Goes back to what Margaret said at the beginning about trust, right? You follow those that you trust. And so in this particular example, by listening, you're building that relationship of trust. Okay, so our second question for the person who was listening, this is the question that we'd like you to answer. What did you notice about the other person's response when you asked them open-ended questions? So what did you notice about the other person's response when you asked them the open-ended questions?
When you ask a person a question, they stop and look at you. They might not give you an answer right away, but you say, you know one thing, you are right. And I believe what you're asking me, and I will give you an answer. Yes, you are right, because God is on your side. And that is a good question.
I like what she said there about how she noticed that the other person paused. Because when you ask a question that's meaningful, what does that person have to do before they respond? They got to think. They got to think. And as they're thinking, they might even be doing some solutioning. It's good for them to hear themselves think through their response, to understand and hear like, oh, maybe I didn't think about it this way before. You know, sometimes you just need to hear yourself talk. A good leader helps to draw information out of you. Now, again, we're just touching the first level of this because there are other skills to get to like a final action plan and things, but we're just starting here with the foundation of listening. So, key takeaways, because we got about 5 minutes and I'm sure there are questions. Yes, Bishop.
Mean if the person's response was spontaneous,
What does it mean?
but just a spontaneous response.
Oh, that's great.
To your open-ended question, if they didn't pause or think, but had a spontaneous answer.
I think we might have an answer here that might be spontaneous, so go ahead.
My thought is that that person really needed to be listened to. Needed to be listened to. They had something they really wanted to talk about, and they would like opportunity. This is my therapeutic opinion. To be, they would like another opportunity to be able to do that.
I'm
They
going to
were-
cut it here.
Yes.
Thank you. Because I want to make sure that we're being respectful of time, but I love the question, Bishop, about the spontaneity, and I love the response about you really fulfilling that desire that a person has. The only other thing that I'll say that contributes to that means that the person gets excited. Oh my goodness, they actually want to listen to me. Okay, yes, let me just pull out. So the spontaneity sometimes is good, and sometimes the thoughtful thinking and deliberate thinking is also good. But you've noticed that all you're doing is asking questions, open-ended, and the information's coming out. So we're going to wrap it up. Key takeaways for today. We're looking at an inspired, not a top-down vision. And one of the major tactics to enhance your vision or creating a shared vision is to listen. Awesome.
So we want to end with a challenge, and this is something that you can reflect on throughout the rest of the conference. And it's twofold. We're going to talk about an organizational and individual level. So the first challenge and reflection question is to think about, how are you doing individually with your listening? How are you doing individually with your listening? And secondly, how is this organization, the UFCCM, doing with listening? Up and down, across the organization, how is the UFCCM doing with listening? Something to think about as you go through the rest of this week. The second question that I have, how are you doing incorporating the ideas of others to enhance the vision? So at an individual level, in your leadership, how are you doing incorporating the ideas of others to enhance the vision? And then if we apply this at an organizational level, how is the UFCCM doing incorporating the ideas of others to enhance the vision? Inspire a shared vision, listen to others to enhance that shared vision. I'm going to give it to Margaret. She's got one quote that she wants to leave us with, and then we'll have a brief Q&A.
All right, so here are my words. They're not mine, they're courtesy of Winston Churchill. And they are, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Anybody can do it if you're taught well. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Oh, I wish I could go into that just a little bit more. Because sometimes we get intimidated by, oh, well, if they bring me their ideas, my idea is going to get shut down. There is so much room in the kingdom of God for all of our purposes to be manifested, you all. I believe it with my whole heart. This isn't a one-person show. It can't be if we're going to have some type of sustainability. And what greater vision is it that we can have as children of God to see his kingdom be enhanced? So we will end it there. I think we've got about 2 minutes for questions. Yes, okay. Oh, he's running.
What do you call it when you're talking to somebody and they're listening to you, and you're answering your own questions as you talking to them? Like you have the answers already, you know, you might have answers, and like I'm trying to get an opinion or feedback, but I'm answering. I had a friend tell me, well, you already answering your own questions, so you know already. So what is that? What do you call that?
So, did you want to come? So, in that scenario, you're the person that's doing the talking. So, it kind of mimics the exercise that we did on the second one, where you're being asked questions and you're just hearing yourself speak. Because intuitively, especially as children of God, if we're being led by the Spirit, God's already given us the answer. Sometimes we just need to stop being so stubborn and get out of our own way and just be able to hear. We didn't even touch on listening to the Spirit. We're just talking about listening to each other. That's a whole other level, and I'm not going to preach. But what that means is that you're having an opportunity to get out what you already have in, and you can hear yourself answering those questions. So it's really, you're just having an opportunity to be listened to and to be thoughtful.
I'll just say briefly. You'll find that if you are active listening to someone else, sometimes you just need to give them that space. And so it's that first example. You're just listening. Sometimes they just need to talk it through. And they will come to the realization. And just by being, was it presencing in healthcare? Presencing. Sometimes just by being a presence, by being an ear to listen, you will give more help than you could by asking them those open-ended questions. Sometimes you just need to be present with them.
Okay, and I've witnessed this, but sometimes people respond or listen depending on who's talking. So, and I know that all of that can apply, but maybe a person would have to really identify with the fact that I got an issue with that person that's talking. So you've already formed a thought, an opinion, no matter what they're saying, because you have something against that individual. So the question is, and I don't know if it's really a question, but it was a thought that came because I know that that can happen with people who's talking. So, and I'm sure it can be, the answer is apply these points. But what do you do about knocking out the fact that you got a problem with a person?
Oh, Margaret said that's conflict management. That's next year's seminar. So I have two responses to that, and then I'll let Margaret share any thoughts that she had. The first is, we know biblically and spiritually that we need to respect our leaders, whether we agree with them or not. They have been placed in authority over them, and if we are disrespecting them, we are disrespecting God's appointment and his order. And so it's like, oh, I don't like what they're saying, but I'm going to respect them because God has placed them in authority. Humility, exactly. Because if you humble yourself, then God will elevate you. The second thing is, you may have a different vision. You can humbly come to that person and share your vision and how you see yourself in that vision. And if both parties are open to the conversation, then there can be synergy around that and the ultimate vision can be enhanced. So listen to the person, be humble, but then also pray about how God would have you to share your own ideas with that individual. And like Margaret said, come with a solution. Here's something I see. Can we work together? Can I work on this project? Here's how I would like to move it forward.
No, that's not
Okay.
Thank you. I just have a question that may be irrelevant, but I'm wondering as a listener, when you ask somebody a question, how obligated are you as a listener to listen when they just go on and on and on and on to answer the question?
You can take that one.
That is an excellent question. So I'll go back to one of the foundational things that we said, right? Leadership is an art and it's a science. In those instances, one, you have to check out, okay, well, who's my audience? What am I trying to achieve in this listening activity? And there are thoughtful ways to interject and pivot a conversation depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So that's a whole other set of skills to put in your tool pocket or to put in your toolkit, essentially. But you can still listen and find ways to pivot or interject, because some people can go on. And if you have 15 minutes or you have 10 minutes with that person, you can do it thoughtfully. It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
So just practical examples of this. So 2, 1, if you're interacting with the person, you can excuse yourself in a polite way. I really want to hear more. I'm sorry, but I have X to get to. Can we pick this up at a later time? And I'll give you something just in my line of work. I have people that will come and interject and say, I'm sorry, Director Brown has to move on. And so as a leader, have that person. You know, he may be an armor bearer. She may be just a friend. That if they see you in a conversation that you need to get out of, they will come and rescue you. And do it in such a way that is not demeaning or disrespectful, but is uplifting. So.
And for those of us that may not have an executive assistant to pull away or an adjutant to help us pull away, then in that sense, you're absolutely right. You know, I really am listening to what it is that you're saying, and I can hear you well. I want to make sure that I'm understanding what it is that you're saying, or I want to make sure that we're respectful of each other's time. I want to make sure that you're getting out of this conversation what you need. How do we do that? And then you can interject a close into question and wrap it up. And speaking of wrapping it up, we are over time. Yes. Thank you all so much. Thank you all.